Captain Pete Hegseth. Did I pronounce that correctly, sir? He's the Executive Director of Vets for Freedom, an infantry officer in the Massachusetts Army National Guard, and an Iraq War veteran. Received his BA from Princeton University. He's currently pursuing a master's degree at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. Is that, sir, all correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Chairman Leahy, Ranking Member Sedgwick, other members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's a privilege to take part in these proceedings. My name is Pete Hegseth. I'm the Executive Director of Vets for Freedom, an organization of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans dedicated to supporting our warfighters and their mission on the battlefield. I received my commission from Princeton University in 2003 and have since served 2 tours of the United States Army, the first in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and second in Iraq with the 101st Airborne Division. Currently infantry captain, as the chairman said, with the Massachusetts Army National Guard, and a graduate student at Harvard University. I'm at this committee today as a citizen and a veteran and do not purport to speak at all on behalf of the military. But I'm going to start with the bottom line up front, as we do in the Army. We're a nation at war with a vicious enemy on multiple fronts. I've seen this enemy firsthand, as have precious few from my generation. The enemy we faced detests and seeks to destroy our way of life, while completely ignoring and exploiting, for that matter, the rule of law. This context motivates my testimony today. I've got serious concerns about Elena Kagan's actions toward the military and her willingness to myopically focus on preventing the military from having institutional and equal access to top-notch recruits at a time of war. I find her actions toward military recruiters at Harvard unbecoming a civic leader and certainly unbefitting a nominee to the United States Supreme Court. Ms. Kagan is clearly a capable academic, and the President has the right to choose who he pleases. But in replacing the only remaining veteran on the Supreme Court in Justice John Paul Stevens, how did we reach this point in this country, where we're nominating someone who unapologetically obstructed the military at a time of war? Ms. Kagan chose to use her position of authority to impede, rather than empower, the warriors who have fought and who have fallen for this country. I know a number of my fellow veterans will testify to Ms. Kagan's personal support of veterans on Harvard's campus. And Ms. Kagan has had good things to say about the military, which I appreciate. But for my money, actions always speak louder than words. And Ms. Kagan's actions toward recruiters with wars raging overseas undercut the military's ability to fight and win wars, and they trump her rhetorical explanations. General David Petraeus calls counterinsurgency a thinking man's war. Defeating our enemy on the battlefield and in the courtroom takes the best America has to offer. Yet in 2004, as you've heard many times already, Ms. Kagan took the law into her own hands, blocking equal access for military recruiters in direct violation of federal law. Moreover, she encouraged students to protest and oppose the presence of military recruiters. These actions coincided with my deployment to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, itself a legal maze of graduate-level proportions. Would not the legal situation there and in the courtrooms in Iraq and Afghanistan be better off with participation of lawyers of Harvard Law School caliber? And don't we believe our best and brightest should be encouraged to serve? In response to this critique, Ms. Kagan has repeatedly stated that despite her decision to bar recruiters from the Office of Career Services, the number of military recruits actually increased during her tenure. Let's be clear about that. It increased in spite of Ms. Kagan, not because of her. But I ask a more important question: would that number not have been even higher had she actually supported recruiters rather than actively opposing them? To be fair, I don't begrudge Ms. Kagan's opposition to the so-called don't ask, don't tell legislation. Reasonable people can disagree about this policy. However, her fierce and activist opposition to the policy was intellectually dishonest and unnecessarily focused on the military. In emails to students and statements to the press, Ms. Kagan slammed, and I quote, the military's discriminatory recruitment policy. Yet as a legal scholar, she knows better than that. She knows the policy that she abhors is not the military's policy, but a policy enacted by Congress and imposed on the military. In fact, after the law was passed, Ms. Kagan went to work for the very man who signed Don't Ask, Don't Tell into law, President Clinton. So for her to call it the military's policy is intellectually dishonest, and her opposition to military recruiters at Harvard Law School had the effect of shooting the messenger. Likewise, while Ms. Kagan sought to block full access to military recruiters, she welcomed to campus numerous senators and congressmen who voted for the law she calls, quote, a moral injustice of the first order. Additionally, Harvard Law School has 3 academic chairs endowed by money from Saudi Arabia, a country where being a homosexual is a capital offense. So rather than confront the congressional source of the true legislation or take a stance against a country that executes homosexuals, Ms. Kagan zeroed in on military recruiters for a policy they neither authored nor emphasized. In closing, the real moral injustice is granting a lifetime appointment to someone who, when it mattered most, treated military recruiters like second-class citizens. I urge you to consider this as you consider Ms. Kagan. Thank you for the opportunity to address this important topic.